Yeah, I don't know that much about Irony either, but I did play against SilverName just recently, and he took a pretty decisive victory over me in, I think, Star Ladder.
Right.
And so he's really a strong player, solid, and he's got a huge fan base. You can see why. Dude's a winner.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players who is such a popular streamer that you forget that he's actually just pretty damn good at HearthStone, very similar to Tice. And I would say even oftentimes yourself.
Thank you.
No, I don't mean it's an insult. Like,
no.
I'd say you are underestimated by a lot of people.
No, I'm taking that as a compliment that I'm being compared to Tice and SilverName. Those are some very successful men.
They are indeed. I think SilverName, I don't know if that's still true, but a while ago when I was checking the numbers, he was the highest tournament prize-earning player in Russia. That was probably before Pavel took Worlds, I guess.
Right. That's a pretty big swing on the
It is
dial.
indeed. But he's got himself a lot of tournament money, and looks like he's showing no signs of slowing, as I believe he was one of the very few undefeated players through the group stage, going 5-0, or possibly 4-1 at the end. But very, very strong performance in the group stages before advancing through to the top 16. And looking at his lineups, he has gone all in on the strategy of aggro here, with Zoo, Odd Rogue, Odd Secret Mage, and the Hunter, which has been banned away.
Yeah, and I'm noticing, is this top player, is that actually Irony and not Purple? Because he's playing King Mukla, which is one of Purple's favorite cards. Love to see that. It's a very powerful tempo play. The drawback of giving your opponent bananas is quite significant, but it's actually got some cute synergy with Divine Favor. You give your opponent bananas, and then you draw extra cards because of it.
It's true.
And it's just generally a card that does well when you're ahead on board and your opponent is kept off board. And it has particular synergy with the secrets in the deck. One thing that this aggressive Secret Paladin can do is put up secrets and just kind of leave up one minion for the opponent, knowing that it's not actually going to accomplish anything with that one attack when it's going into a Noble Sacrifice or that thing that makes a Divine Shield, Auto Defense Matrix. Yeah. And that game plan is strengthened by King Mukla. The bananas make an even bigger attack into already doing nothing because of the secret.
However, I think you would most of the time rather be playing King Mukla against a slightly more controlling deck, because obviously they struggle to find the removal to deal with it so early on, whereas up against Odd Rogue, giving them a couple of bananas could be very scary indeed, especially if they're throwing them down on, say, a Vicious Fledgling.
Yeah, and I was just talking about Secret Synergy. Here's another one. Amani Berserker with Redemption comes back as an enraged 5/1, right?
Oh, yes.
That's pretty cute.
Yeah, this deck is pretty interesting from Irony, taking a look at it. You may not have seen too much of the Secret Paladin. I know Ball Control, who's here casting the women's division here at WESG, was playing a lot of this deck for a while. It runs double Bell Ringer Sentry, obviously, as the synergy with the secrets, in addition to the Secret Keeper. The benefit, obviously, is you get to play Call to Arms, which you don't get to play in Odd Paladin, because it's not quite worth it with just the 1-drops. And obviously, Sunkeeper Tarim as well, with a whole bunch of cheap 1-drops. That starts to get very tempting indeed.
Yep, and Irony's always playing Amani Berserker this turn because it's bigger, and bigger is better. The 2-health Knife Juggler is an absolute disaster against SilverName's hero power. He's kind of hoping to not play that until he can protect it with something like Righteous Protector.
Yeah, I think that the Knife Juggler had some merit because it makes SilverName's play very difficult, because if it's Redemption, he obviously wants to attack in with the dagger first and then kill it off with the mole. But if it's also Defense Matrix, he wants to attack in with the mole first and then the dagger. So it would have been very possible, I think, for SilverName to mess that up, because it's basically just a 50-50 as to how you want to play around it.
But SilverName still has sort of the same issue here with the Amani Berserker, with the difference being that there's just less upside for SilverName when he guesses when he gets things the wrong way.
Yeah, I agree. Overall, this was definitely the better play to be going for, but it does mean that Irony is more susceptible to a Vicious Fledgling, actually, because he doesn't have the Knife Juggler already in play to hopefully get some pings in to try and take it down.
Yeah, and playing King Mukla and letting bananas come down on that bird doesn't sound that great. Now, he could Knife Juggler Secret Keeper. That gives him a 33% chance to be able to clear off this Vicious Fledgling.
And if he hits the 1-3, it's really not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. 2/3 of the time he's happy with... Oh, not that third of the time. That's the bad one.
Yeah, that is not where the knife was supposed to go at all. So now he can, like, enrage his Armani Berserker, but is that even worth it? Because you're just giving more trading potential to the 1-3.
You're thinking face, he's thinking enrage.
I guess the extra 1 attack that you get from the Diamol attacking in on this turn, it doesn't really do anything because everything stays at 2 health. And you have now an enraged Armani Berserker instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's important there. So SilverName's got kind of a tricky turn here. He's got to think about what he already knows about that secret. Based on how he attacked, he knows it's not Noble Sac.
Right.
So it's Redemption or Auto Defense Matrix. So against Auto Defense Matrix, he wants to attack with his 1/1 into a minion first.
Right.
Against Redemption,
You really want to do it the other way.
yeah.
And I guess the Noble Sacrifice was the thing that would swing it in favor of attacking with the 1/1 first. Because that you'd rather do it in that case of the Noble Sacrifice as well. But like you said, now he knows that that's not a possibility. It's pretty much a straight up 50-50.
Yikes. That's a scary thing to take when there's a bunch of high threat minions on the opponent's board. One throws knives, the other has 5 attack, and the third can get bigger.
Makes the right call, though, in going for the dagger swing first. The 1 health resurrected juggler is easily taken care of.
Yeah, and that's part of why he wanted to attack the knife juggler first, is when he kills the knife juggler and it gets redemption, it doesn't throw a knife off. Anything else he killed off, the knife juggler would fire.
Excellent point. As now that synergy that you were talking about, you know, is available to Irony in the form of going Muckler, then follow up with Divine Favor. But to be honest, the likelihood of that working out is pretty low because SilverName can then dump his hand. And also, you're giving your opponent bananas for a vicious fledgling, and fledglings love bananas.
Yeah, if he were to play Divine Favor, it's because he'd really want to hit a certain 1-mana card here, which I guess would be Righteous Protector, but even then, you got to think it's going to be King Mukla this turn.
Yeah.
Setting up for maybe a bigger Divine Favor next turn, or better yet, maybe another tempo play. Probably like Called Arms off the top into Sunkeeper Terran would be what Irony's looking for to win this game.
So things are not working out absolutely perfectly here for SilverName. Like the dagger not being able to take out the Mukla is obviously the one thing stopping him from having the absolute dream scenario.
Yeah, so what's SilverName looking to accomplish this turn? He wants to spend his mana doing good stuff is the short version of it. Something along the lines of weapon into 5/2, new weapon, 2 bananas on the bird.
I was looking at the same, but you just go Hench Clan Thug instead, and you don't re-dagger, and then you go 1 banana on the fledgling, because then you're sticking more minions, which means a higher chance for Fungalmancer next turn.
Okay. So you like Banana Thug, and he's going to do Banana and then attack with the bird first, because that's just good sequencing. You do the random thing first, kind of get more information.
Yeah.
Look how precise SilverName is with this sequencing. It's making me happy. Thank you. So +1/+1 makes it trade,
Which is
with
good
the
enough.
5/5,
Yeah.
which is better than the alternatives.
Right, yeah. I still agree with that. This looks good. I mean, you know, he can value trade into the Hench Clan Thug, but, you know, you're leaving up a 5/4 Vicious Fledgling, and that's way more scary than the Thug is on its own.
All right, fairly straightforward 2-drop Divine Favor turn for Irony.
Yeah, but drawing cards going into hopefully your Sunkeeper Terran turn is not what you want to do. You just want to go as wide as you humanly can on the board.
Yeah, but he just didn't have a good way to do it.
You don't have a choice,
He's realistically, he's not expecting to Sunkeeper Terran on 6 here. He's hoping his turn 6 sets up for a good Terran on 7.
And this isn't bad. Maybe some precise knife juggles from the juggler could swing things back, but...
Kind of is bad, though, because he wanted to, like, Call to Arms.
Right, yeah.
So he could value trade the Hench Clan Thug rather than trading the Vicious Fledgling. It's a very risky play, leaving a Vicious Fledgling alive. But the thing is, Irony is in a very bad position right now. And he needs to find a line of play where he actually wins the game sometimes. And one way he can win the game is value trading that Hench Clan Thug, guaranteeing it doesn't grow, and then just getting really lucky on SilverName's Vicious Fledgling adapt. Sometimes it hits a bunch of really yucky stuff, like Taunt, Can't Be Targeted, and what's something else gross? Stealth.
Is usually bad, yeah. That's usually the worst 3 options when you're facing down a board from your opponent.
And indeed, Irony takes the high-risk play, looking to get lucky and get back in this game. I love it.
1 turn away from Volspine Slayer, pretty importantly for SilverName, but with a plethora of 1-drops, that's really not a concern for next turn.
Interesting turn here for SilverName. It's hard for him to spend his mana effectively. Drawing a 1-drop was quite odd. He wanted to draw a 3-drop. He wanted to go 3-drop dagger this turn.
Yeah, you're right.
But it just didn't quite come together for him. The Fungalmancer...
You're trading not very nicely.
He's actually leaving that 5/1 Mukla up. Look how good that value trade was for Irony last turn with that 5/1 Mukla. It's going to stick another turn as a 5/1. That's how good it was. 3 health.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, like the downside of doing that is he's now being hit in the face with this Vicious Fledgling, which could have got Wind Fury, but he's in such a bad spot that he needs to get lucky. He needs to pray that something good happens so he can pull back. And good stuff is kind of happening. Kind of.
Yeah, he's about to get Vile's Mind. It's not that good.
Yeah.
The good news is the Blaze Collar won't be shiny on turn 7, but I don't know if that's good enough news. It looks like this board's just going to beat him.
Yeah, Tar Creeper was kind of a consideration because you could go Tar Creeper, Dagger, Deadly Poison, which means you sacrifice off a 3/3 instead of playing the Bar Spine, but it does allow you to go Blaze Caller next turn. But I agree, like you're probably not going to need the extra reach to go through a taunt because there aren't many taunts in the deck.
Yeah, when you can Vile Spine a 3/7, you probably take that because there's not a lot of bigger targets, and it's turn 6. It's the best possible turn to Vile Spine.
I agree with you. It's just, you got to give me a bit of leeway. I'm used to casting Lorinda, with which the tactic is whatever he says you should do, you work as hard as you possibly can to find some other line because it's wrong. I'm not used to casting with someone who finds lines that are sometimes correct.
No, it must be confusing for you. I'm sorry.
It's deeply confusing. As SilverName gets himself off to a very nice victory there with the Odd Rogue. I'm not actually sure of how I would have predicted that matchup against the Secret Paladin beforehand, but I wouldn't have put it as a particularly huge favorite for the Odd Rogue. Like, against any kind of aggressive Paladin, you're often finding yourself falling behind on board as the Odd Rogue, I think.
I feel the other way.
Oh, really?
My instinct is the Odd Rogue should clean that matchup up pretty hard. That hero power seems absolutely insane.
I guess so. When you're playing the likes of Secret Keeper and Hydrologist, Knife Juggler, those are all 2 health minions.
Yeah. A lot of stuff just gets farmed.
I'm still in the Odd Paladin state of mind, which is a different fare entirely.
That one doesn't run out of value.
That's true.
One's got a very different hero power.
That
it changes everything.
And I guess you can see the difference because even though that Odd Paladin wasn't running, the Secret Paladin there wasn't running out of value anywhere near, spending 3 mana to get that value is just way too slow in that matchup.
Yeah. It was about tempo. It was about being ahead on board.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the Zoo deck now for SilverName, still that very interesting new version of the build that we're seeing a lot nowadays with the Grim Rally, the heal package taken out, and there's a whole bunch of 1-drops thrown in there instead. Up against the Control Priest from Irony, which we saw earlier on today, I believe, from Asterix, who was having a good amount of success with it, and Moyen as well, who was unable to take a victory there at the end with his. But I think up against the Zoo,
I want to talk about this. I'm so excited. SilverName threw away Voidwalker, which I think a lot of players just automatically default keep it because it costs 1 and they'll play it on turn 1.
Yes.
And he threw it away, and I love it. Thank you, SilverName. He's looking for Flame Imp. He's looking for Keleseth. He's looking for the truly good cards. He knows that this matchup's kind of tough. Playing against cards like Dustbreaker and Psychic Scream with an aggro deck can be a bad time.
Yeah.
And he needs something truly good to win. And playing a 1/3 on turn 1 against Priest is not very good when they answer it with a North Shore Cleric. Now, on the flip side, leading with a Flame Imp against the North Shore Cleric, very powerful. Triple the pressure, farms it on board.
Yeah.
Keleseth, that's a card that actually, makes the matchup favorable instead of unfavorable. He didn't get the Flame Imp on 1 that he wanted, but, he threw away. There's a general principle in Hearthstone, which is you throw away mediocre, okay, kind of good stuff like Voidwalker, and you look for the really good stuff on the mulligan.
Right.
And that's what SilverName did.
Yeah, good enough was not good enough for him there. Because like you said, we saw earlier on today how good the North Shore Cleric starts can be. If you hit that, even with a powered shield, the Zoo deck can just do nothing unless they hit exactly Flame Imp, like you said.
Yeah. So Divine Hymn, pretty weak when you're behind on board. Mind Blast, absolutely atrocious. Psychic Scream, hey, that's AoE removal against an aggro deck.
And it's looking like he might be able to get there. Tar Creeper into Mass Hysteria. Those are cards that can tide you over until turn 7.
He's considering the Divine Hymn, because he does get to value attack this Light Warden, and he has a Tar Creeper, but I think it's got to be the Psychic Scream.
I agree. You've also got to be a little bit careful with
the Light Warden Divine Hymn interaction.
Healing up, yeah.
But the Light Warden is dying, so it's okay.
Yeah. I said this is the version with the healing taken out. I'm going to have to take a second look at the deck list, because contrary to what most people are going for, clearly with the Light Warden, this is still the heal version from SilverName.
I think SilverName's playing more of an old school deck, right? And Void Ripper doing fun flippy rippy things, allowing him to value trade with the Keleseth. There's some question of what happens if he just leaves that 1/2 alive and pushes 2 face damage with the Keleseth. But I think what he did was probably correct. Looks normal and good. And here, bit of a yucky turn for SilverName.
Yeah, all pretty grim. These are all cards that you kind of want to play when you're close to winning the game.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up Soulfiring, trading the Keleseth, and pushing 3. So I think it's a decision whether you tap before or after the Soulfire, and I think my answer is before.
Because these are all cards that are, obviously they look very weak now, but they could be very good later on.
Yeah, and I'm imagining if I draw like a Flame Imp, I'll just play it before I Soulfire.
Right.
What if I don't know if there's Firefly in the deck, but I'd love to play that before Soul Firing and just discard the Flame Elemental. That'd be cute.
So I guess the scary aspect then becomes if you draw Fungalmancer or Doomguard or anything else right at the top. Or actually, sorry, he's not even running Doomguards in the deck.
Yeah, it's a Leroy deck. A lot of times they pick either Leroy or Doomguard. A few people run both.
You're right. I think there's very few cards that you'd be sad about discarding there. But I guess, I mean, he doesn't even have to go for the Soulfire line at all. We could just see Life Drinker and chill. Or Life Drinker attack, because if you just chill, you're very, very weak to Duskbreaker indeed. Yeah. Yikes. That feels no bueno.
So he chooses this over tap Soulfire, huh? It's a bit surprising. Also, one thing I want to highlight here is there's Mass Hysteria for Irony, which is often not in these Dragon Control Priests.
Good point, yeah.
He's teched even more anti-aggro than usual with an already anti-aggro deck. He's really responding to how the field presented itself in the previous form of the tournament. There was a lot of aggro, and he's just like, yeah, you know what? You're going to do that? I'm ready for you.
Yes, indeed.
Mass Hysteria, Dragon Priest, let's go.
And I have to be honest, there have been quite a few points in this tournament where Mass Hysteria would have been pretty good in the Dragon Priest, because obviously, like you said, the reason you don't go for it is you end up in situations like this where you're winning on board and you don't want to clear when you're ahead. But I've found a lot of times the Dragon Priest can't get ahead all that easily.
I mean, that's 90% of Hearthstone is attempting to get ahead.
Yes, I will agree.
And that's why Mass Hysteria is such an incredibly powerful card. It's just that in the matchups where it's not good, it's really not good.
Yep.
There's some matchups where the Dragon Priest has to be ahead and they have to stay ahead and push enough damage or else they just lose in the long run. And Mass Hysteria is just a hard dead card the whole time. So he took a big risk by including it, but in matchups like this, he gets rewarded for having it. So this is a really strong Soulfire turn because it combines with that Dreadlord tick. The thing on SilverName's mind is he's scared that Cabal Shadow Priest is going to come out and take this despicable Dreadlord.
Yes.
And he has to decide
whether he trades in first.
Yeah, like the Dreadlord gets taken either way, but if he bumps it in, like maybe it's a small enough swing that he can actually recover and win.
And, you know, I mean, like, it was difficult to make a board on this turn that was weak to a stolen Despicable Dreadlord, because obviously none of his minions in the deck have 1 health now because they're all buffed by Keleseth. But by trading in here, he's playing around it as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so SilverName does play around the Cabal Shadow Priest, and Irony does have it, so another, decision that is going to work out well for him. He's thinking ahead, what's my opponent up to, and how do I prepare for that? That's a big part of winning Hearthstone. What's my opponent want to do next turn, and how do I prepare for that?
But now that this has happened for Irony, does he still have to go for the Cabal Shadow Priest? Because generally I find in these Priest decks, you don't have that much minion pressure a lot of the time, so it often helps to clear the board first through the use of Mass Hysteria or Psychic Scream in the next couple of turns, and then develop afterwards to steal a minion.
Right. So one thing that's interesting is if he wants the Hysteria this turn, what's the best way to do it? I think you trade off a 3-2, and then you're hoping that the 2-1 fights the 2-3, and it's a full clear.
That seems to make sense.
But he's just going for the Cabal, and then he's going to trade the 2-1, I suppose. Words are scary. And now the Light Warden's on the other side of the Fungal Enchanter.
That's true, I hadn't even considered that.
Biggest minion, all face.
Yeah, I think the more I see it, the more I'm liking this Cabal Shadow Priest, because like he's staying perfectly good enough on board, and the longer he can hold on to these Mass Hysterias and Psychic Screams, the happier he is.
There's a right moment for everything. It depends on things like the opponent's hand size, how much reload they're likely to have, and so forth.
How much burst damage they're likely to have, because especially now that you've seen Leroy discarded by the Soulfire, you can afford to take much more of a beating, I think, here without fear of dying, because Soulfire is pretty much the only burst.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. SilverName has used a lot of his burst, therefore he needs a really big board to represent lethal, therefore Irony can afford to be more patient with his AoE cards like Mass Hysteria and just make okay plays like Cabal Shadow Priest.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
So 7 mana. Holy Fire is not enough damage to kill the Dreadlord. Shout out to Prince Keleseth, which goes back to SilverName's turn 1 decision to throw away the okay Voidwalker looking for the good stuff, Prince Keleseth.
So then does this turn become Mass Hysteria?
Do we have to?
It's going for Scream.
Wow.
I mean, it spends more mana. which is a big benefit over Mass Hysteria. But Psychic Scream is really, really, really good. And he wasn't that far behind on board at all.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. That didn't look right to me.
Because, like, so the reason to go for it over Mass Hysteria, which was a guaranteed clear, like you're trading Hysteria, which clears every time, is it's the more expensive play, so you have more freed up mana next turn.
It's not just that. It's also that he pushed face damage.
Okay, yeah, that is relevant.
He didn't have to trade. He got to smack his opponent in the face. His deck does have Mind Blasts in it. He's got a Shadow Visions in hand to find it. He's got a Holy Fire in hand.
Yeah.
So he's thinking the opponent's actually kind of low here, and this bit of chip damage matters quite a lot. Now, that's debatable, because he does have an Alexstrasza in hand if you wanted to try and go about it that way. But a lot of times it's hard to find a moment where Zoo applies so little pressure that you can actually offensive Alexstrasza them. That doesn't really come up that often.
But even then, like, Mass Hysteria last turn, you could have fit in the Shadow Visions as well. So it's not like you were floating 2 mana that was completely useless on that turn.
Right, but it kind of sounds like floating to me. You're upsetting me.
Find you another Scream. That's a good card.
I don't know. He's thinking, well, I thought he was thinking Mind Blast based on how he screamed the other turn.
Okay,
now I don't know what he's thinking.
Fair point.
Okay, so tap, minion, Fungalmancer, Smork. I like the Voidwalker a little better. Stronger against Anduin is one thing.
You just want high health stuff as well when you're going for facing down a potential Mass Hysteria, I think.
Okay.
Kind of.
That's generally correct.
Generally, yeah. Obviously, they can then attack into each other twice, which gets a little bit weird, but... Now, like you said, the Alexstrasza are way too much pressure on board here, but because, again, of that Keleseth buff, the Primordial Drake becomes pretty scary here, so it looks like Irony might just be digging for a Psychic Scream.
I like Hysteria and Ooze behind it. That looks like a pretty good tempo play. Now he's picking the Mind Blast over Holy Fire and Minion?
He misclicked, dude. Look at his reaction.
Is that what happened?
He just jerked up as he picked that.
What were the options on the Shadow Visions?
Psychic Scream.
That's what he meant to pick.
Obviously.
And Mind Blast, what he did, in fact, pick. And SilverName, I think you can kind of see him looking up at his opponent, kind of wondering what's going on.
Right.
I think he's noticing his opponent's unusual body language.
I mean, the clear is there, but now the play is significantly worse, I would argue, than what you were suggesting of Mass Hysteria Ooze. You want to clear and then populate the board afterwards to make your opponent's life more difficult.
Perfect Solarium timing by SilverName. He's got an empty board, so he really wants to reload hard. He's got a full 10 mana to spend. And rewarded. I mean, he can life tap here too, right?
This is so indicative of a lot of the HearthStone we've been seeing today, where it seems like generally good game plans, but just messing up small details that shouldn't be being messed up. Because look at this. Imagine if there was a Psychic Scream in hand for Irony. SilverName would play the entire board and just have it disappeared instantly.
Yeah. SilverName's wondering how much stuff he wants to hold back.
Right, because from where he's sat, that could very possibly be the Psychic Scream.
He's going to hold back on the Happy Ghoul he just drew. He's going to play Voodoo Doctor, Flame Imp, and the Happy Ghoul that would get discarded.
Okay.
Because he wants to play all the stuff that's going to get discarded, so he has to Voodoo Doctor, and then these two, and then he holds back the other two.
Looks like he might be considering holding back on the Flame Imp for damage purposes, like he doesn't want to hurt himself because he's afraid of dying.
There is that Shadow Visions card, but he saw Holy Fire come down on a minion a couple turns before. No?
That's true.
Look at that.
Was he thinking about Mass Hysteria as well? Like, maybe that makes it slightly harder.
That's very difficult to catch.
Yeah. Irony getting very close to well, actually not very close, but getting a little bit closer to closing out the game in his own right with Mind Blast. But I think what is much more powerful for him at the moment is the Drake into Drake, which beautifully clears up this whole ward.
Another Flame Imp for SilverName. Considering he voluntarily discarded the last one, there's no way he's happy about drawing this one. He's probably going to voluntarily discard this one too, right? Or no, changed his mind. Sees the Primordial Drake and he says, you know what?
I've got to go all in.
We're going in.
Yeah. Because, I mean, he was probably so...
He was expecting AoE.
Yeah, he was so set on the idea there was Psychic Scream, so he's like, why would I do 3 damage to myself for something that's going to come down anyway?
Right.
Whereas
and then once he sees the opponent doesn't have AoE, he's
Yes.
like, all right, well, now it's time to jam in. It's not him being inconsistent. It's him reading his opponent and reacting to his opponent's plays.
And he did make the incorrect read, but that's because Irony made a bad play. Like, he was giving respect to his opponent that in this instance was not earned. Because he should have picked... Well, he should have picked the Psychic Scream, shouldn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want us to call you good,
Probably play
be
better.
good, yeah.
So here you actually trade in a 4-1 before you Fungalmancer. You want a Fungalmancer on the 4-2 and the 2-1. Because you're soul firing the 4-8, right?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, we can see that if he doesn't play Fungal Enchanter, he's dead anyway. But I guess he has to just live in the world where double Mind Blast isn't there. So, I mean, you know, to Irony's credit,
This was just sloppy. SilverName just missed a +2/+2 buff on his 2-1 for no reason.
Right, okay.
But
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Right.
He's very dead.
And
But that was just bad.
I think Irony and us both did not expect him to pick the Mind Blast there when Psychic Stream looked so devastatingly powerful. And
Everyone was surprised. He was surprised. His opponent was surprised. You were surprised.
everyone was truly and utterly surprised. And though it won him the game there, I think we can agree
No.
Scream would also have just won him the game much more consistently.
He had lethal without the Mind Blast.
Oh, right. Okay, never mind.
So, yeah. It won him the game there.
Sure. I mean, it did win him the game. He played double Mind Blast. I'm not wrong.
You're completely correct.
Thank you. This is the kind of support I'm looking for. As the Priest taking the victory there is somewhat expected, I would say, as the strongest anti-aggro deck available to Irony. He does have himself left with the Secret Paladin, which I think could be in a bit of a weird spot. Maybe a little bit more decent against the Zoo than it was against the Odd Rogue. And he's also left with Hogwaggle Druid, which is, I have to say, I don't think all that bad against aggro, especially with the Oaken Summons package thrown in there.
Togwaggle Druid, it does pretty well against aggro. What it really struggles against is mid-range. Decks that can build a big board that Togwaggle Druid can't remove, so especially decks that have Death Rattle themes tend to be a nightmare. But aggro can just get farmed by cards like Swipe and Spreading Plague and Malfurion and whatnot.
It's not quite so dominant against the Secret Paladin, I would imagine, as it is against Odd Paladin, of course, because you're going to get generally smaller plagues, and they have Tarim, very importantly, which is one hell of a card. But here it is going to be the Zoo for SilverName yet again, trying to take a victory with it. And he's got himself what does not appear to be all too bad of a hand. A Flame Imp or a Librarian would really beautifully tie it with a bow all together. But he can make some powerful stuff happen.
Right. The point you're making there is that SilverName needs a way to damage himself so that the Voodoo Doctor heals him so that the Happy Ghoul costs 0. And the Light Warden isn't quite doing that.
Exactly. That is perfectly illustrating what I was trying to say. And now I'm going to say it again because he really, really, really wants to be damaged here.
And you know what? This is part of why this heal package exists in the Warlock Zoo deck and not other decks, is that Warlock, unlike other classes, can life tap on 2 to consistently fix this problem, whereas other classes have to use more inconsistent ways to try and make it work, and so it tends to not be good enough.
Exactly. It works in such nice synergy where you're damaging yourself and you're also refilling your hand, which makes up for the downside of playing a bunch of 0 mana cards, which is you just have nothing to play afterwards.
So this is one of those instances where Irony's not going to play his 1-drop on 1. He's going to coin out either Amani or Knife Juggler. Which is it and why?
So either one gets punished by exactly damage yourself plus Voodoo Doctor.
So you go with Knife Juggler, because when it sticks, it wins the game harder.
Right, that makes sense to me, because they both die to the +2 attack buff if the heal comes in.
Yeah, and they both die to Soulfire, and what else kills them? There's no Veteran in SilverName's list, I would guess.
I like it, yeah. The
so
2 and 3 health are identical.
Yeah, Knife Juggler and Amani Berserker
basically
do the same thing
stats.
here, but when they stick, you want it to be a Knife Juggler, because he's throwing knives. And
that makes a lot of sense. Sweet. I mean, we could just see double Righteous Protector on this turn to protect it as well if you wanted to. I guess
he doesn't even need to protect it, actually.
Yeah. Just trade in Berserker feels like a fine way to
He doesn't need to protect it because SilverName doesn't have any charge or rush minions here, right?
Good point.
There's no weapon. So what Irony's thinking is he should probably not play the Righteous Protectors. What he wants to do is first trade to guarantee that the Knife Juggle isn't wasted, and then play an Amani Berserker. And what that does is it plays his kind of his slower minions first. The Amani Berserker doesn't have an immediate board impact like Taunt or Charge, whereas Righteous Protectors do. And the other thing it does is it saves more juggles for later. The juggles are going to be better later because they're going to be shooting at minions later, whereas right now they're only shooting at face. And it's more important to hit minions in face because it's the early game, it's all about board control.
I most certainly agree with you there. As now SilverName, his way to come back into what was a pretty disgusting or disappointing turn 1 and 2 for him is to develop massively onto this board, which means he is definitely ahead for the moment, and it's all on Irony to try and wrestle this back. But I think he has a pretty good way of doing so.
Oh, yeah. Noble Sacrifice, double Righteous Protector. That blocks 5 attacks and throws 3 Knife Juggles. Remember, the Noble Sacrifice does proc the Knife Juggler.
Good point.
That's going to go off on SilverName's turn.
This is taking me back to the Giggling Inventor days, all these taunts and Divine Shields.
Yeah, right?
It's not good for my mental health.
I enjoyed those quite a bit. I like a nice Giggling Inventor. Hee hee hee. Not for you, huh? It's a little bit spooky. If Knife Juggler like leaves a bunch of minions injured but not killed, sometimes SilverName finds a heal card like Fungal Enchanter. So Irony's got a decision to make here.
And these juggles really were not ideal. Like anything going to face there as it did was kind of a nightmare scenario.
I mean, Irony really wanted to throw a juggle at the 2-1, but I guess since he didn't get that, he can still value trade it. Imani Berserker didn't have any other great attacks, so it's really maybe not that bad that he didn't juggle any better.
Yeah, and like you said, the Fungal Enchanter is bad because it heals the minions back up, but you know, this Light Warden wouldn't get to go face in addition to that, so it's not like he's going to start losing the damage race all of a sudden. And I like not trading him with the Knife Juggler there, because like you said, the extra proc is very important.
So he attacks with the 3/3 first into the Noble Sacrifice. Good choice there. Now, it was actually, I would argue, a tiny bit sloppy, because he could have played Voidwalker first, saying that he wants a juggle on the Voidwalker, which I think he did.
I agree with that. I think that's a good point, because it could have hit 3-1. The 3 that he attacked into.
Yeah.
Straight away, which kills it off.
And here he's going to heal one of those 3/1 Happy Ghouls, because he's just trying to maximize board. And that means maximum health in play. Oh, really? He's healing the Light Warden so that can he attack with it and have it still be alive? I don't know. He healed for 1 health instead of 2, and I think that's a really big deal against the Knife Juggler here. I would have liked to have seen the Voodoo Doctor heal a Happy Ghoul for 2.
I think I agree, especially because the difference between 3 attack and 5 attack is 0 at the moment. Everything dies to 3 attack. Oh, it heals up anyway. It goes up anyway, yeah.
Yeah, you just needed to have a stronger, more resilient board. Like what he got out of it was he get to make an extra attack into Righteous Protector, but that's actually not even important. He has Dreadlord coming down next turn. He kind of wants those Righteous Protectors to survive so that the Dreadlord gets more value.
I mean, the way he traded was definitely to set up the best Despicable Dreadlord as possible, because he traded into the Divine Shield rather than the Protector that would actually die.
Oof, Knife Juggler doing good work here, finally picking some minions off. Probably a hero power here. Really? Oh, because he thinks Redemption is stronger than hero power because it's going to be on a knife or on a Righteous Protector. Fair enough. It doesn't line up that well against this Despicable Dreadlord, though.
Yeah, and he has to be expecting a Dreadlord to come down, especially as SilverName's play of attacking into the Divine Shield indicated that he is trying to get everything down to 1 health and follow up with the Dreadlord.
No, I think it's the other way around. I think the way SilverName played his last turn indicated not having Dreadlord in hand. You could even look at what I was calling a misplay as a genius psychological play, trying to mislead his opponent into thinking he doesn't have to worry about this Dreadlord.
But the attack that he did on the Light Warden after he buffed it up was not to attack into the taunt that would die, the 1/1 without Divine Shield. He attacked into the 1/1 with Divine Shield. Whereas if he didn't have the Dreadlord, I get your point that you're making, that he should have just not attacked at all to make the best Dreadlord play possible.
But he...
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
If you leave a 1/1 taunt Divine Shield in play, then it can't trade itself off the board to play around Dreadlord.
Okay.
And he deliberately killed the Divine Shield, giving the opponent the option to play around Dreadlord by trading off his own minions.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm sorry for ever doubting you. I've learned my lesson.
I feel like I went a little too deep on that one. Okay, so Leroy is pretty funny here because knife juggles happen. Also, it's just never the play. I'm just trying to say something about the position where he's going to play Dreadlord. He's thinking about the order of things. You probably want to play the minion before you attack if there's a Noble Sacrifice up, right? If there's a Noble Sacrifice up, you want to play the Dreadlord first so that the Noble Sacrifice doesn't juggle, so that the Noble Sacrifice can't juggle with the Dreadlord.
Well, it makes no difference, right? Because the 2/1 would die anyway, right, to the Dreadlord. So you want it to hit the minion there, if it's do it.
Okay, well, let's just move on.
I think I'm right on that one, because the 2/1 would attack, your 2/1 would attack their 2/1, right?
Yeah, it was attacking it 2/2. So he
but
wanted
if it was
the
if it was the Noble Sacrifice, then it attacks the Noble Sacrifice instead, right?
Oh, okay.
Whereas if which means he wouldn't want the dagger to go on his Dreadlord, because the Dreadlord would
You're
kill...
absolutely right.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, in this instance it was correct, although I can agree with you that some of SilverName's sequencing while on the most part has been good, there's been some misplays so far, for sure.
That was a great spot by you and SilverName. Okay. So now there's this fun interaction going on between Leroy and Dreadlord. When Dreadlord sticks, you can Leroy and ignore the whelps.
That's true,
and they just get farmed.
What the secrets turn out to be, though, makes a big difference. I didn't catch which secret it was pulled in by the bell ring sentry, but I mean, I think you really just want to try and avoid auto defense matrix.
So you're thinking you're not trading. It's probably not a Leroy turn either, right?
Yeah.
It's probably just Dreadlord face. And you know what's funny about that? That's playing his biggest minion and going all face.
Interesting how that turns out to be
It happens
correct.
a lot.
But if it's Noble Sacrifice, you don't want to attack at all because you don't want to let the 3-4 trade in. Yeah, kind of. Either way, it turns out
He
to
killed
be a
it.
redemption.
It's a redemption. That's great news for him because it's dying to the Dreadlord. And he's going for the Leroy over the Dreadlord. Huh.
But now he's weak to Noble Sacrifice, right? Unless he... Okay, if he just doesn't attack, then this makes a bit more sense. But then another secret comes in now. Again, we unfortunately do not know what the secrets are, but 2 secrets in play now. It probably has to be Auto Defense Matrix plus Noble Sacrifice, I think, at this point.
7 mana, so it's either Void Ripper and Chain Gang or tap.
Or Dreadlord, which destroys the entire board.
Which goes to the tap.
Yes, I like that a lot.
That does seem pretty powerful. Kill everything, keep everything. I'm interested.
That sounds like tempo to me. So you need to be afraid of redemption and... Like, I mean, you can just not attack, right, and then attack in the next turn with a Despicable Dreadlord, because you don't need the face damage necessarily. You just need to lock down board, which Dreadlord does.
Okay.
And I guess if it's Defense Matrix plus Noble Sacrifice, a 2-1 would be left on board, which dies anyway.
And here again, he's hoping he juggles the knife juggler. Oh, this is perfect for him, right? Because the Leroy's attack wasn't doing anything.
That is literally
anyways.
perfect, yep.
And this is exactly the scenario we were talking about 2 turns ago, where
Exactly
SilverName got
the
it
same.
right, you got it right, and I got it wrong.
Yep.
Very cute. Loving it.
This just works out so gorgeously.
He could not tap because of Divine Favor and because he's confident in his Dreadlords, but he's going to tap because it's good.
Yeah, I was considering the amount of damage that could go to his face through Leroy and Vine Cleaver from his opponent, but yeah, the Divine Favor is very much more a consideration here.
I mean, SilverName has a Chain Gang, so he's really not concerned about getting bum rushed here in the face, so just take the extra card.
And I think Irony's expression there kind of says it all as to the Vine Cleaver. It really does not feel great, but do you have a choice?
I mean, I would imagine he's playing the 7-mana card. I would imagine incorrectly. How about that?
I mean, this does quote-unquote trade with the board, or at least deal with the Despicable Dreadlord that's actually doing the damage every turn.
I'll say this for Irony's play. It's more confusing than Vine Cleaver. It definitely, you know, he's in a losing position, and it definitely complicated the board.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, so you mean it's more complicating for SilverName, not for us to try and figure out what on earth's going on?
It's all around more confusing. I'm not, you know, specifying one way or another, just all of it, you know. And this is this comes up more in chess than in Hearthstone, but there is a general principle of when you're losing, you want to complicate, and when you're winning, you want to simplify. Because when you're winning and you keep it simple, you win. That's great.
Yeah.
And when you're losing and you complicate, hey, maybe they get confused.
Right.
Yeah, conceding doesn't make things too confusing, but neither did Vine Cleaver, so I respect it.
Yeah, I mean, SilverName had just locked down the game at that point. 2 Dreadlords on board. Paladin's absolute worst nightmare, whether you're the Secret Paladin or the Odd Paladin in particular. That is going to be the Zoo taking a win for SilverName, which means he's left now with only his Odd Secret Aggro Mage against both Tog Druid and Secret Paladin. And while I've not played a whole bunch of the Odd Secret Mage, I would have to imagine against a deck that gains as much armor as Tog Druid, it's probably not a great matchup.
Yeah, so currently the score is 2-1, but based on that matchup, it feels like it could be arguably a little bit closer to 2-2.
Right.
And the really important, the huge game is that aggro Secret Mage against this aggro Secret Paladin.
And I have to say, if you were thinking that odd rogue is in a good spot against the secret paladin, the same principles kind of apply with an upgraded 2 damage hero power for mage, right? They're still playing decent 1-drops, hero powering on 2 and pulling ahead fairly early.
There's a very big difference, which is that the odd rogue hero power is twice as much damage per mana.
Right.
It's twice as much tempo.
Yeah.
It comes at a cost of life, but how important is that?
I agree it's better in the odd rogue, the hero power, but there's other things that work in the favor of the secret mage. Like you have the powerful spells that can swing the board back in your favor as well.
Okay. And we see Irony keeping a Spellstone here against aggro. Very normal, very good. He's got 2 removal and a card draw spell. That seems like a winner of a hand. And on the flip side, it looked like SilverName kept Mirror Entity.
Yep, and Stargazer Luna and the Secret Keeper. Obviously, just trying to get any secret to upgrade the Secret Keeper as quick as possible, I suppose.
All right, doesn't make any sense to me. I guess what he's thinking is he's gonna need a really good draw to win.
Yeah,
and a really good draw is Kirin Tor plus Secret. But normally you would mulligan for the Kirin Tor part, just believe in the Secret part. I'm surprised by Mirror Entity in particular in this matchup. There's not a lot of minions, nor a lot of big minions for that to really get.
Yeah, I can understand the Secret Keeper and the Luna, because I think one of the strongest things that you can do against a Druid in particular is make minions that have to be removed as often as possible, because Druid, it has fairly good removal in the early game, but it runs out eventually, and as soon as you stick one of those minions, you're going to be pulling massively ahead in the game.
I totally agree that what you want against Druid is minions, but my reasoning for it is quite different. The reason I'm thinking I want minions against Druid is, in order to beat a Druid, I need repetitive minion damage. Burn damage is terrible because they have so much life gain from cards like Oaken Summons and Branching Paths and Malfurion and whatnot. So when they have a lot of life gain, you need a lot of damage to kill them. That means repetitive minion damage. You need a minion to stick, and you need to hit him in the face over and over and over again. And the way to do that, like you said, is keeping minions so that eventually the Druid runs out of removal and something sticks and hits him in the face enough times that he falls over.
Makes sense.
Which is where the Mirror Entity made no sense.
Right, yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. Like, if you have Counterspell plus the Mirror Entity, it makes it a little bit more difficult, because obviously if Irony had in hand now Oaken Summons and an Ironwood Golem, he'd probably play the Golem instead, because it doesn't just get Counterspelled and you get absolutely nothing. But he didn't have the Counterspell in his starting hand, SilverName, and yeah, I agree with you. I think it was an unoptimistic pick. It harkens back to the mulligan you really liked with the Zoo, where the Voidwalker, it's all right. It's not great, though, so look for the really good cards, as he should have done here in looking for Kirin Tor Mage and powerful 1-drops.
Yeah. Ooh, Irony takes a calculated risk. He was gambling on no Counterspell, and it was Counterspell. Oaken Summons was probably the most powerful spell he could play into that.
Absolutely.
He risked it for the Biscuit, and did not pan out well for him this time. But doesn't mean it was wrong. It just means it didn't work out this time. The analysis of whether that was the best percentage play is extremely complicated, and I'll leave that up to somebody smarter.
I've got to be honest, it didn't feel right.
It didn't feel right, but we're looking at the counterspell, and that influences our feelings.
Very good point, very good point. And I was looking at Twig on that turn from him, but that just runs into the exact same problem next turn. Like, Twig does basically nothing to that board from your opponent, and then you're still facing down the counterspell next turn, so maybe it should have just been Swipe on that turn. But Swipe's very good too. It really does get confusing, like you said.
So you can Twig hero power down the 4/2. That's one line of play. A lot of times what Purple would talk about in positions like this is you just want to focus on casting UI and not being dead. So that means a lot of times there's a turn 7 Nourish for crystals, so it would be something like he could Spreading Plague this turn, then Nourish for crystals, and then UI. That doesn't quite look right to me, though. My instinct here is just Twig hero power the 4/2, but maybe the Twig is wrong, because the Twig sets up to win in 5 turns when it goes off, right?
Right.
But the reality of the situation is he's winning before then, because he's going to get to UI before then.
Right.
So the Twig is actually not a relevant thing to develop.
And so we're going for this play first. What he is setting up for, I mean, I agree, I think that Twig was probably not the way to go, because you don't have the time to spend the mana, and it probably doesn't end up being that influential. He's making a weaker play on this turn, setting up for hopefully a better Spreading Plague next turn after his opponent plays more minions.
Exactly. He's setting up... Here's the thing. He's setting up to win the game via casting UI. Now, Twig doesn't help with that at all.
Yeah.
So he wanted to either Plague or Nourish, and he chooses to lead with Nourish to get a bigger plague next turn, like you said.
The downside of that, however, is that with a Clockwork Automaton on board, while usually the Odd Mage doesn't have that much damage, it can launch over the top of taunts, because obviously then that confuses the Cinder Storms and the Arcane Missiles to not going face. In this instance, he actually does have a pretty respectable amount of damage that he can just launch off to the face.
Yeah, so let's say he does Cinderstorm Hero Power. That's 9 damage, putting the opponent at 3. Then when a Spreading Plague comes down, Hero Power is lethal.
Yep. And I think I like it because of exactly that.
He goes for the Black Cat instead, which is weaker to a Spreading Plague, but maybe he thinks it's still good enough. Spreading Plague's got to be on SilverName's mind right now.
It really does, because what else pulls Irony back in this situation? He would have to go like double branching paths, all for armor and Spellstone or something to really solidify his position without the Plague to stop all these minions. It's a complicated turn, and again, it's very difficult to analyze our feelings because it feels like Cinderstorm was the play there with the hero power, because we can see it would have won him the game.
This Missiles is a pretty big pickup. It's kind of a lot of damage.
It's kind of a lot of damage. I think that might just be guaranteed lethal at this point with the 4 and the 6. Or is it 1 off?
I mean, technically he could fail to clear the taunts, but otherwise, yeah, this is lethal, right?
The damage with the Black Cat comes through to finish things off anyway, and that does mean that SilverName, with his very aggressive lineup, taking down Irony there, despite a slightly... a play that we didn't agree with there right at the end, takes a very, very important victory, advancing through to the top 8, which I'm sure chat will be very excited about.
I thought Black Cat over Cinderstorm was very reasonable.
Okay.
I much more disagreed with the Mulga decision to keep Mirror Entity. That one I struggled to defend or understand. But that one's kind of like a close judgment call. We're pretty